Hey everyone, it's Travis, producer of The White Vault, and Caitlin as well. We have a couple of quick updates, though, that we wanted to get through to you. First and foremost, this isn't an episode of the White Vault Core series. We've just gotten halfway through Season 4, and we will have a new episode releasing every 2 weeks, starting 2 weeks from now, all the way through the end of the season. Then we'll return back with Season 5 in October. We also wanted to let you know that Imperial, our award-winning miniseries spin-off that introduces the character, Dr. Liu, in Season 3, will be available for purchase on our website as of the release of this episode. The World of the White Vault includes 3 miniseries so far, Artifact, Imperial, and DeLuca, and all these shows are available to our Patreon supporters at the Apprentice tiers and above, but we understand that some of our fans prefer to support us in other ways. Now, both Artifact and Imperial will be available through our website for direct purchase, though DeLuca is still only available on our Patreon.
The story of Imperial follows the records of a Jesuit cartographic mission into northern China during the Qing dynasty. We don't want to give away much, but we will say that the show features some phenomenal sound design and even some of the most recent recordings of the endangered Manchu language. Head over to our website to learn more and hear more about what dwells in the mists of Heilongjiang.
Okay, then I guess we're ready. Welcome to our fun interview of #AskWalterHeath. With David Ault, the voice of Walter Heath and many others on many other shows. Today we're here to chat about holidays and ghost stories. Yay! And the man behind the voice.
Hello, thank you very much for inviting me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks for being here, David. Exactly. We appreciate having you here. Also, we have with us...
I am Caitlin. I am the writer for The White Vault and lots of other things as well. So.
And I'm Travis, the sound guy and producer.
And everything else. As I sit here and look at my screen, what I see is the behemoth of writing partnerships, which I've said this to Travis before, but I can say it directly to you now, Caitlin. How do you do it all? How do you consistently keep on pumping out so much excellent writing, production, etc. on such a consistent... I don't understand it.
Caitlin is motioning to a teacup in her hand.
It is tea, yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of tea.
I should have known.
I mean, I do this full time now, but this is not an interview with Caitlin.
Yes, but it's been a very interesting year.
Yep.
And I think it's really great that we're all getting together to talk about some fun stuff for a change.
Socially distant across an ocean.
Yeah.
And a continent.
Yep. And a continent, yes.
An ocean and a continent between us. We're recording in Portland, Oregon, and you're recording somewhere in England.
I am indeed, in Ripon, North Yorkshire.
Where is that?
So if you get the United Kingdom and go halfway up and towards the east, you'll find me somewhere around there.
Cool. Thank you.
Careful. They will find you.
Ripon, even though it's a city in the British sense and not in the American sense, because I think at the last census we had about 11,000 people in our city. But it is
that's so small.
I know. But over here, a city, you only need, classically, you only needed to have had a seat for a bishop. So if you have a cathedral or a minster, then you are a city. Otherwise, you're a town. That changed in 2000, but classically, it's a city.
All right.
It's pretty cool.
It's still really small.
It is.
And I heard a rumor you also do haunted ghost tours there as well.
Yes, I do the ghost walks. That's a lot of fun where we take people around the city centre. Take people just on a short little walk, about a mile and a half. Show them some of the places where grisly stuff has happened and where people have reported seeing ghosts.
And just so people who've never been to England have a visual mental image of the scape. So this amazing city, are we picturing skyscrapers or a small village in the countryside? So what is it very green? Like, what's the layout of it?
Okay, so where I am is wonderfully green, in fact, because Ripon is based between the Yorkshire Dales on one side and the Yorkshire Moors on the other side, and it's in this little valley between the two, if you like. So you only have to drive 2 minutes and you're out into wilderness, it feels like, which is a wonderful place to be.
It sounds like it.
In terms of the city itself, if you picture... even if you picture a nice little medieval town or any kind of D&D type just kind of rural medieval town and put a gigantic cathedral in the middle of it, then yeah, you've probably got what we have here. Of course, Britain is very much not built on the grid system, so everything has all the streets wind and curve and whatnot. So yes,
that sounds like right out of a book.
Oh, yeah. Oh, very much so, yes.
Did they put the cathedral there to be like, we're going to be a city? Or was it some sort of...
Well, okay. So one of the little stories that I'll tell you is that the founding of Ripon as a city goes right the way back to the year 886. So 1100 years ago, 1100 odd years ago. And King Alfred, whom you might know of as the one that burnt the cakes, was around and about. And because Ripon was able to shelter him for a day, he said, tell you what, I'm going to give you a charter to become a city. But because he didn't have any parchment to write on, he grabbed a horn and wrote it on there. That is what started this whole tradition of a horn being blown at 9 o'clock every night in the market square. Supposedly, every night since the year 886, it has been done. Who knows? But it certainly goes... It's called setting the watch, and it's one of the things that Ripon is famous for.
That's fantastic. And then he burned some cakes? I've never heard this before.
Oh, okay. The story of King Alfred is that he was on the run and stayed at some elderly woman's shack, hovel. She went out to collect some ingredients or something, forage for something, and said, watch the cakes while I'm out. And unfortunately, he fell asleep, so the cakes got burnt. And that is what everyone knows of King Alfred. He burnt the cakes.
So the house didn't burn down. It was just...
No, just the cakes.
Okay, just the cakes. This isn't an episode of The Lucky Die. Okay,
yes.
When you make omelets, you have to start a big fire. Okay, so we know you got into voice acting somehow, and I believe it stemmed from a love of literature that kind of morphed into a love of audio drama.
To an extent, yes. So as a child, I used to go to sleep with a bedtime story on tape, and that became The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which is a wonderful, wonderful piece of literature. It is better in the radio series than any other medium, and don't at me, but yes. So from there, I developed my love of audio drama. It was then in the wilderness years when Doctor Who went off air, and especially from 1996 onwards, where I was looking around on this newfangled thing called the interwebs for new Doctor Who audio drama, just seeing if there was anything going. And yes, there were groups doing Doctor Who audio drama. There was Back to Reality, which was one down in Australia. Darker Projects, which is where I eventually got into audio drama, but various other ones. And so I found Darker Projects. They were also doing some sort of scary stories. Night Terrors was the series. So that and various other things. And then they put out a casting call or not even a casting call. They said, is there anyone that can do us a couple of lines for our Star Trek Section 31 fan audio drama? And I thought, well, why not? I grabbed a microphone, just an ordinary simple one, and recorded Slip Drive Engage Captain. That is where it all started. Really.
And once the slip drive was engaged, just couldn't stop.
That was it. Yes. Warp speed. Yeah.
Humble beginnings. Yeah. Everybody seems to, when we talk to them about how they got into audio drama, it seems to be, well, I gave it a shot and then I got stuck.
Exactly. Yes. It was that. It was, and it was from there that the Byron Chronicles came about, which is still going even since 2006.
And it's a great podcast.
Yeah. Thank you. That's Eric, who is also in Portland.
It's funny. It's a Portland story that takes place in Portland, written in Portland, and it has you as the Portland Grey Man.
Yes, indeed. So that was basically where, and to begin with, being a Brit in a very American-dominated sector, I got a whole load of roles as villains or mystery people with agendas, everything that you could probably expect. Oh, and God and the devil, which are two sides of the same coin. Yeah, so I was a bit of an audio drama whore. I just went for whatever things I could go for. I know it's 9 o'clock in the morning over there. It's probably not the right time to be talking about whoring oneself out as an audio drama person, but sun's over the yard arm over here, so there we go.
And then you got involved with the NoSleep podcast and became an international touring sensation.
Yeah, so it was back in 2014. I had listened through series 1 and 2 and 3 and thought, wow, this is amazing. I want to get involved. So I emailed David Cummings and said, you wouldn't be on the lookout for any other British voice actors, would you? And he said, yeah, go on, try this. And again, that is how it started.
And then now you're also a TED Talk speaker as well.
Yes. So very recently, at time of recording, I did a TED Talk for my old school. They were doing their own TEDx event, and they wanted speakers, and so I ended up doing a talk for them about how we can look at disinformation in the media and work out what is truth and what isn't.
Thank you for your service. I'll be sharing that one with my mother and some friends on Facebook.
Thank you. But yeah, the NoSleep podcast is such a wonderful show to be on
and to listen to.
I think audio drama fans are some of the best people anyway, but it's been amazing to go on tour with the NoSleep podcast and meet everyone and just hug everyone, which is something I'm really missing this year, is the ability to hug people.
Yeah, we concur. We have our dog, and he kind of helps. He's like 80 pounds, and he basically counts as a person.
Yeah.
A small person.
So we have some questions.
Okay.
People burning questions. Some for us, some specifically for you, some for Walter Heath, the character, as if he were a person.
I began to regret putting up Ask Walter Heath as the hashtag, because I was like, people are going to get confused. They just are.
And this is fun because we've actually grown a lot since the last interview with Kessie or Peter. I don't remember which one was. I know who's who. I just don't remember which interview came last.
I think Peter was the last one.
And we've grown a lot as a show since then, which has been really exciting. Mm-hmm. And that's been really, really cool.
Oh yeah, I'm on the edge of my seat when it comes to the White Vault still, because I've been listening through it and so good.
And I'm actually really glad to hear that you do listen.
Absolutely.
Our first question though is how did we meet? And I'll let you and Caitlin kick that
How
off.
did we meet?
So you don't remember? You sent us a message.
Did I?
You did, and you backed my Kickstarter for Liberty because you enjoyed the podcast, and I was like, David Ault. This can't be the same David Ault from the NoSleep podcast, who we're huge fans of. And then your response is just, "Oh yeah, of course it's me." Yep. It's like David Ault is following us, and then we started kicking it off from there, and we started talking to each other, and you like our stuff.
You fanboyed.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh
yeah. Caitlin even fanboyed.
Yeah.
Oh,
we had been listening to NoSleep for so long. NoSleep was really what I got Travis when he had never listened to a podcast before. I was like, you know what? We're gonna listen to scary stories while we cook food, and then it was we're just gonna listen to scary stories while we're eating food, and then just sit in the dark and listen to scary stories after our plates are empty, like
on bated breath.
So yeah, we had been hearing your voice for so long, and then finding out that you actually knew of our other show, or our only show at that point, was like,
yeah,
it was quite flattering.
Oh,
so
yes.
we knew who you were. And it was exciting when Travis saw your name and was like, that can't be him.
I listen to a lot of podcasts. My podcast queue is full at the moment because I'm not doing as much commuting. But yes, Liberty was definitely one of the ones that I started listening to. I was impressed with everything, the production values and the acting, etc. It was great.
So another question, what was it like casting the role of Walter Heath from both perspectives?
So casting it, that's not for me.
Well, what was it like to audition? Because there's two sides to the coin.
I don't think he auditioned.
Did I audition?
We said, hey, we have this person that we kind of wrote.
Yeah,
for you.
in fact, I think that was actually the case in Seattle. You asked me whether I would be interested in being in your next show because you'd written parts for me and Peter, and you were really pleased that both of us agreed. Without question.
There was no casting. It was, this is for you, yes?
Yes.
People think we're a little more organized than we are, perhaps.
Well, I think a lot of people think about the White Vault as it is now, as a much larger show. But when we were writing the White Vault, all we had was Liberty, and Liberty was a tiny show at the time. So people think that we had far more influence and we were doing big casting calls. The reality of the situation was we were like, we love your voice. Can we use it?
We have this hobby idea for our next hobby story thing where people get murdered in the Arctic. Would you like to join us?
Yes. I like your writing. I like your production. Please give me scripts.
And to clarify,
I need scripts. Please give me scripts. Please give me scripts.
We flew 3,000 miles to see that show because we really wanted to see NoSleep. It was also Caitlin's birthday.
Oh,
and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Anytime I got to escape Florida was a good thing.
So we have some more questions. This next one says, how are you such a badass, and what was your inspiration for writing and also acting as Walter Heath? Thank you.
I haven't done any writing for Walter Heath. How
I was the writer.
Yep.
Sometimes people don't remember that actors and writers aren't the same thing all the time.
Sometimes they are.
I think people forget that we exist. Continue.
I was just going to say, because I have written a couple of stories for NoSleep.
Creepy holiday stories.
I leave the writing to Caitlin because she is amazing. Why am I such a badass? Or how am I such a badass? There's permit me, if you will, to tell you a little story. It was 2001, right the way back then. I came over to America to do summer camp as part of the Camp America program, because I had seen in the late 90s all of those summer camp programs. They were shown on our TV on Channel 4, and seeing all of these American kids having such amazing times at summer camp. And I thought, well, I won't be able to do that, but I can probably get employed doing it. So I thought I'll join the Camp America program, use my summer in between uni to go over to America. And I went to a summer camp in Pennsylvania, which was a lot of fun. They had originally put me with the 16 to 18-year-olds, but soon realized that I should probably be with the 8-year-olds instead. And yeah, that was the very first time anyone ever called me cool. So it was one night where the counselor for the bunk, I was on bunk 2 and this was bunk 7. And yeah, so the other guy or those counselors were off into Scranton, I think it was, for getting some much needed R&R. And so I was looking after bunk 7. The kids in there just weren't settling down. They were not going to quiet down, get to bed and sleep the night away. So I said, okay, do you want a story? And they said, no, we don't like stories. I said, okay, well, how about a ghost story? Because ghost stories are something that you are absolutely forbidden to tell at summer camp because they sometimes have adverse reactions. So I told this ghost story that I remember even had me shaking as I closed the cover and put it away. And out of the 6 of them, one of them had fallen asleep straight away, so hadn't heard any of it. The other 5 complained that they were feeling very sick and came with me to the infirmary, where 4 of them stayed overnight. The other one came back with me, sat outside on the veranda until the main counselor, arrived back. And this guy was a Geordie, so from Newcastle, and he came in and he said, what the hell have you done? I said, I just don't understand. There was this outbreak of something, and they just felt that they needed to go to the infirmary. So, that's what I did. But it was a few days after I was talking to one of the kids, and he said he was having a difficult time with some of the others. And I said, well, don't worry, because bullying is something that happens. I got bullied when I was at school. And he turned to me and looked up at me and said, but you couldn't have been bullied. You're cool. It's like, oh, I've been called cool. For someone to actually call me badass, it's like, what? It brings those same stirrings of, I don't understand this, but I'll take it. So yeah, how do I go about playing Walter Heath? Well, Walter Heath, I think, as I said in season 2 when I was looking through, he's a whiny bitch. In order to get into the character, I mean, I can definitely see where Walter Heath is coming from, but I think he has suffered from not having enough love and companionship in his life. I think he has his ex-wife, who they obviously didn't get on well, and so I think he's been quite alone and embittered by that. So with that sort of thing in mind, that's how I approach Walter Heath.
And how long have you been acting? Just in general?
20-odd years. I mean, my first appearance on stage was for a church pantomime way back when.
So we have another question here. It's, have you written things, not necessarily just for audio, but do you write things in general?
Hasn't everyone written some poetry? I've written stories for NoSleep. I've written stories that have been turned down by NoSleep.
Haven't we all?
Obviously. Yeah, I think that's about it. I dabble, I think, is probably the best way to describe everything is I dabble. If people want me to do something, then I'll see if I can do it.
And what does your audio setup look like for those of us who can't see you right now?
Okay, well, I have here a Neumann microphone, which is lovely, and I'm literally in my wardrobe or closet for my American listeners, because if I pull back the curtain here, you'll be able to see clothes and things. So yes, there is a rug and some audio foam behind me, and this is my setup. So I record audiobooks, all of my scripts, and occasional bits of singing in here.
And do you listen to all the things you're in, or just select ones? Because you're in a lot of things.
I do listen to a lot of things, and for the most part, yes, I have listened to everything that I have been in, and that's not just as a self-congratulatory thing. Yeah, I genuinely like listening to audio drama. Some of the training that you have to do as a voice actor is to learn to like the sound of your own voice when it's played back to you, which is
very tough.
It is, yes, and plus the ones that people I know who have extremely good production values, like White Vault or NoSleep or some of the other ones. I know that it's going to be a really good story, and so it's going to sound really good, and I'm invested in the characters as well. So when in Vast Horizon I was there as Captain Sarpon, I was on his side, but I knew what was coming. But I just needed to hear it.
And then, Caitlin, the question was also directed at you. Do you listen to the things that you write?
Yes, but a long way down the line. I usually I'll listen to bits and pieces when Travis needs me to double check whether or not the pacing is right. But then I usually will not listen until I'm writing the next season. So if I'm writing like season 3 of something, I'll listen to season 2
as a catch up.
Yeah, it resets my brain and gets the characters back into my mind so that I can put them back on page. It's usually a very, very long delay, usually a year's worth of delay.
It's actually quite fun when you discover that you've done some recording, and the production process has been so slow that you've completely forgotten what it is that you record, and it just suddenly pops up, and it's like, oh, I'm in this. I forgot.
And we did have a question about that, actually, again, for Caitlin. Do you have a favorite moment that you've written, perhaps like maybe a scene or a line?
Ooh.
I really enjoyed writing the jumbled flashbacks that Noira has at the beginning of season 2 of Vast Horizon.
That was a very fun series of messed up things.
Because it was just a fun challenge to take past memory and present action and try to meld them together in like a weird psychosis.
And on the White Vault side,
I really enjoy writing all of the archaeological like mumbo jumbo stuff. I love writing that. I love doing the research for it. And then I love taking it all together and putting it on the page and having, it's usually Simon at this point, because he's the character that is really there for the work itself.
Next question. Does David have a degree in astronomy, astrology, or astrophysics? And how do we tell the three apart?
I have degrees in astrophysics and astronomy. I do not have a degree in astrology. How do you tell the three apart? Astronomy is pointing up at the night sky and saying, that's Betelgeuse. Astrophysics is saying, Betelgeuse has this composition, and we can work out how long it's been active and when possibly it's going to die as a star. And astrology is then saying, well, because then Cancer is rising and Taurus contains Mars, then an anvil is going to drop on your head.
And do you have a favorite star or system? We have a lot of favorite questions, about 6 of them.
Okay. Favorite constellations? Well, Orion is a nice, easy one for everyone to find, but I do like Cygnus the Swan, who swims down the Milky Way. It's very easy to find with a cross shape in the sky.
Fantastic choice. And have you seen any movies or podcasts recently that you would recommend?
If I can recommend some of my own stuff, Shadows at the Door is very good if you like Jamesian-style quiet horror. That's come to the end of season 2 now, so it's well worth a binge. The Leviathan Chronicles, which has been going since 2008, is back, and that is an absolute epic of a podcast. So if you haven't checked out the Leviathan Chronicles, do so. In terms of stuff that I'm not in, one thing that this is from the BBC, so it might not be available in North America, but The Sync has been a really interesting bit of sketch / ASMR / psychological comedy horror-ish stuff, which I know sounds awful, but it really works. It has been such an interesting listen. That's only had 6 episodes, unfortunately. But so there's that. The Oyster is a new one that's come out recently.
I was just going to say the Oyster is phenomenal.
Yeah.
You did a great job in it as well.
Thank you. Well, I got my small scene of being married to Carla Gugino, so who can complain, really? Yes, there's a lot out there, and I unfortunately don't have my iPod on me to be able to scroll through and say, yeah, check out this one, check out that one, check out that one.
We also had a couple of England questions that I'll just jump into.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
One's, what's England like? Are there really castles and ghosts? Is tea as popular as they make it out to be in movies? What's the weather like? Is it really dreary or is it sunny? We see different things from like Poldark, where it's always sunny, and Paddington, where it's always sort of rainy.
In order, England, yes, does have a lot of castles. I'm going to say the United Kingdom, while it is still a United Kingdom. There are a lot of castles. There are ghosts. Yes, there's a lot of history over here, which is both to the betterment and the detriment, depending on which way you look at it. Is the tea really better? Yes, tea is better over here. It's the way the kettles actually... We have kettles, which boil water to 100 degrees. 212 Fahrenheit for my American listeners. And yes, tea is everywhere. Tea is absolutely... We have got a little bit more into coffee over the last 20, 30 years. It's one of those things that as soon as you cross the threshold of a British person's door, they will offer you a cup of tea. Is the weather as dreary? Certainly isn't the moment. That's because it's December. But it's certainly not as cold and not as snowy as the north of North America and into Canada. We do have some nice sunny spells from time to time, but it's certainly not as wet, certainly on this side of the Pennines. On the west coast, if you go to Manchester, then yes, it's a little bit more rainy because it's Atlantic weather coming in. But this side, no. I had to water my garden a lot this summer.
And we have another question for David. How is playing a comic relief character, Walter Heath, different from playing a more serious character like the, quote, I've had worse, Buchynski?
Comic relief is... I love comic relief, personally, just because it's a way of just tapping off some pressure. It's one of my favorite things to play, along with Mad / going into psychosis / all the stuff that NoSleep sends me. But yeah, Ias as a character was so much fun to play. And I actually got sent a note by Aethor. He DM'd me yesterday saying, someone said, holy shit, is this really David Ault's first D&D?
And that's on our other show, Dark Dice.
Yep.
As well.
And we have another question on that topic as well. The team, Fool and Scholar Productions and the Dark Dice crew, raised over $10,000 this year by having David Ault, as Ias, go on a series of fictional speed dates with other characters on our show. And first, thank you for giving us something wholesome. And what was that experience like?
Oh, amazing. Brilliant. It was, I was honored and so pleased to be a part of it. But I think the listeners should understand that as a project, I knew nothing about it until, a few days before we started recording? Because Travis, you did agree.
He agreed to go on 10 speed dates.
I agreed to a project ages before because you had an idea, and then I heard nothing, and then it was like, right, okay, when can you do a whole load of speed dates for us? And I said, what?
That's on me.
Well, we've got all of these people lined up, so starting at this time on this date, you're going to go on speed dates as your character from the D&D campaign that we ran 18 months ago. So, okay, cool. Let's go for it.
and again, thank you for going through that. We were really able to do a lot of real good in the real world because of that.
You did fantastically with it. And thank you to all the listeners, to everyone who contributed, to everyone who shared it. Yeah, you were the ones that made it. I was, as I say, honored to be a part of it. And yeah, basically thrown in at the deep end by the people that I am staring at on the screen. But that's great. That's how I like it. If I'd had a whole load of prep time, I don't think I'd have been able to do anything better than what I did.
And people really loved the awkwardness of it as well. It was very genuine. Like when you meet people for the first time in real life, it's always really awkward.
Yeah, that just comes from
That's how it goes.
But the one of the things that I loved about doing that was that Ias was able to ask questions that I had wondered about but didn't have the means to ask myself. He was able to be a voice for me as well. I was really humbled by the way the 10 people that I spoke to were so open and helped me through Ias to understand what they were going through and what life in the beyond of the TQIA, etc., was like. So I was, it was an honor.
We also had a lot of people send us notes who would say things like, I'm one of the other letters beyond B, and this was really cool to hear what life is like from other perspectives. And also that it was really normalized in a bigger show. And segueing into other fun things, because this is quite a fun topic.
It was very fun.
We had some other White Vault content, bonus content that you were a part of.
Oh dear.
We have the musical, we have the White Ault.
Yes.
And even though Lyra's Day Off has you as Walter Heath in it.
It does, yes. I couldn't find Walter Heath in No Lyra's Day Off.
Very well
He was so... it's like he was hiding behind the scenery.
And they wanted to know which one was the most fun to make or more fun, if you had any behind-the-scenes stories.
Every time the musical comes up, it becomes an earworm for me, and it is so difficult to get out of my head. That was a joy, but I think I sent the raw audio of the White Ault to you, and the number of times that you hear me just dissolving into laughter.
And it was amazing.
It's brilliant. That was so much fun.
It was. It really was.
Everyone. Oh.
So to clarify, David Ault voiced every character in season 1 and 2 of The White Vault as himself, basically, pitched up or down, and some really beautiful accents. The rest of the cast loved it.
Oh, good. I was so worried how they might react when they heard me trying to do their voice.
Jonas Thorsen, that one, that was a really great impersonation for you.
My Peter Lewis got better as it went on. No, that the White Ault was a lot of fun to do. I was so pleased, and that was one. Was it that Caitlin you didn't know about until you heard it, or
they were both like that?
I honestly have a really hard time listening to the comedic offshoots that Travis comes upon in his brain, because when I'm trying really hard to write these characters, it really it's like staggers my brain to think like, oh, now they're doing this comedic thing when I just put them through like a really torturous situation. So I have a tendency to like not interact with the comedic offshoots until they're produced, and then I listen to them with Travis. And
to clarify, those are all things that are available on our Patreon at the $2 and up level, everything that we've mentioned so far. Because those are like our holiday specials.
Yes.
But the White Vault musical does get stuck in your head.
Very much.
Like,
very much. I'm
it's just in there.
I'm trying my best to keep it to keep it at bay at the moment.
And what are some other favorite roles you've played on other shows?
Oh,
there's even a comment that says like, we really loved you as we don't think we're getting Heath's Horizon, but we really enjoyed your work in Vast Horizon as Captain Sarpon.
So some of the other things that I've really enjoyed being a part of, well, the Byron Chronicles is obviously the original thing that I got involved in, and if you haven't checked that out, then do.
It's really good.
One of the longer forms, I was in a production of War of the Worlds, where I played the main character Richard Pearson, and that was done by Colonial Radio Theatre. That's a really good one. I think that's available as CD and download. A Scottish Podcast is a wonderful, wonderful, full of swearing, very Scottish podcast. But I play Councillor Byers on there, and he has some wonderfully snarky lines. A slight bit of comic relief in there as well. And, oh, yes. So a couple of other ones would be Darkest Night.
Fantastic
I was in
show.
season 3 of Darkest Night, and I got to play the voice of the PA system that was very, very sinister.
For the elephant.
Yes, for the elephant. And I got to play a journalist in Small Town Horror as well. That's John Grill's podcast. That was a lot of fun as well. So those are some of them.
We have 2 questions left for the real David Ault. Are you as sassy as Walter Heath in real life? Because some of that didn't sound like acting smiley face emoji. How different are the persons David Ault and Walter Heath?
I think, as I said before, Walter Heath came from the idea that, he hasn't been as loved as he could have been. And this has hardened him into being the sassy, sarcastic, whiny little bitch that he is. So how are we different? I like to think that I'm a little bit more open, warm, friendly, and genuine than Walter is. But Walter is certainly very driven, but he's a coward as well. I don't know what I would do in the situation, but I think if I were part of that team, I would have gone down into the caves and been looking around and enjoying all of that. Enjoying. But I think I would have been down there. I wouldn't have been sitting back and trying to raise people on the radio when it was quite obvious that no one was coming.
So what were Walter's qualifications for the job, and what was his job before he went off to Svalbard? To Caitlin.
He's a technician and a communication specialist, but he never really rose through the ranks, as I would say. So when he gets divorced and everything, he takes the opportunity to take on a higher paying gig and heads out to the north.
Yep.
Okay, now Rapid Fireman asks questions to Walter Heath, air quotes. Walter, what questions do you wish you'd asked in the job interview before you went off to Svalbard?
Who else is on the mission? Because I don't think he's that much of a people person, so he would want to know who else is going to be there, so he'd be prepared, either gritting his teeth or ready to inveigle himself into some other better paying gig after this.
Okay, now kiss, kill, take out to T, who is his favorite and least favorite member of the Outpost Freestead team.
I don't think he was a fan of Graham Kasner. And I think he probably has a soft spot for Jonas, but only in a sort of professional kind of manner.
We have another one.
I think his answer to everything is just, let's go to tea.
And speaking of, what is his favorite tea, you think?
What is his favorite type of tea? I think he'll just have Twinings every day.
I said PG tips.
Because they're easy.
Because they're easy. You just put a box on the counter, and he doesn't have the drive every day to make it any different, so he just takes it out of the box and puts it in.
Well, yeah, that's what you do with all tea bags. You just take it out and put it in the mug.
I know, but you say that. I make tea a very different way in my house, because I have all loose leaf teas. I have them in drawers.
Oh yeah, so
for me,
I don't do loose leaf tea. Well, I can, but I don't bother. It's just box of tea bags. So that's why I think Twinings every day, because I think he likes to think of himself as not just the sort of bog standard Tetley or PG Tips kind of. I think he likes to think of himself as one up from there. So that's why he has the Twinings everyday tea bags. I don't think he's got enough nous to go for the strong ones or anything like that. I think he wants to be as normal as possible when it comes to tea, but still like to think of himself as something slightly better than the hoi polloi.
Walter Heath's favorite thumbless animal.
His favorite thumbless animal? I don't think he likes animals in general.
Dog person or cat person?
Cat person.
Cat person.
Yeah,
definitely.
He's a cat person.
And does he like his cat?
I think that he loves him. But
Is Walter canonically gay or bi?
Walter is a straight man who married very poorly for himself, is now kind of off of love entirely because it failed.
Yep, I concur. I concur, yes.
If he spoke a second language, what would it be?
French, probably, because it was what he learnt at school.
Probably French, yeah.
Do you think he was angry that Kasner never called him by his first name, unlike everybody else on the show?
I think his dislike of Kasner went further than just what he was called.
Now, we know that David, the actor, would have been down in the caves, being more active and complaining a lot less. But Caitlin, if you were in Walter's shoes as the writer with the horror stuff, what would you have done differently?
I mean, oh my God, you could not stop me from going down those
Yeah,
stairs.
exactly.
You couldn't.
Exactly.
I would have taken like a sketch pad. If I had no camera, I would have just been drawing everything.
So you'd be the
measurements.
We would just see measurements with the words like when you see all across scribbled. Actually, that would be the line to draw everything, maybe.
Now, if Walter had made it to season 3, would he have jived well with anyone on the team?
I think he would have got on with Dr. Liu because she's quite driven, but without some of the ego that Kasner had. So I think he might well have got on with her in a platonic kind of way.
And having written 4 seasons of The White Vault, what would you have done differently, Caitlin?
I definitely, now that I'm a better writer than I was years ago, I could have written, I just could have written it better. I'm better now than I was. I know that everyone, you get better. I don't know how to explain it other than the way that I built characters, I definitely could have made fixes to nowadays. And from just the writing standpoint, just having multiple years more of writing experience at this point, I could have definitely just been better.
Someone asked like what my favorite sound effect moment was that I've created, and that's a really tough question for me. The moment that stands out was like season 1 of Critical Research, where you have like the Dark Kin, these people telling a story in a large chamber, and like before that was like the first time where I realized, oh, I don't have to record every single sound effect myself. And that was like a huge game changer, where you could go to freesound.org and like pick up sound effects and libraries, and everything changed that day. But unfortunately, the season was pretty much done by then. Now, Dave, what was your favorite moment working on The White Vault? Love your work, by the way, says the person asking the question.
Thank you very much, person asking the question. My favorite moment on The White Vault is it's again coming back to the spin-offs, the musical and The White Ault. But otherwise, the continuing radio announcement, the radio that I got Caitlin to write out for me for the New York City show.
This is Outpost Freestead. I'm reaching out for Seizure Group and possible rescue services. A storm has stranded us here for over a week. Anyone, please respond. Getting the script, opening it up and seeing that multiple times. And this continues underneath. It's like, okay, great, yeah. And just being able to get more and more pissed off as I go through each single one. This is Walter Heath.
And was it Walter Heath canonically, or was it you voicing a different character as the train announcer in episode 10 of Artifact, which you were in?
I was. No, that's probably not Walter Heath. I sound like a lot of people.
And Caitlin, how involved is Izo in the creative storytelling process of what we do, sound design, writing, etc.?
Izo is crucial.
Yes.
Yes. Vital,
yes.
One might say. He also helps me record sound effects that are quite scary. And then, are there any new miniseries in the works? And if so, can you tell us anything about them?
Yes, no.
And actually, there is a Shadows at the Door miniseries coming next year, but I can't tell you anything about it.
So all the people in this chat have lived in England at some point, and this question specifically geared at Caitlin is, what was the process of creating Artifact, which specifically takes place in Oxfordshire, England?
When we actually started podcasting, I think we've said this in like every interview we've done at this point, but when we actually started podcasting, Travis and I lived in England, wrote like our first season while sitting in a pub, and Travis recorded a little bit of it from like our little flat that we had next to the train station. Or train tracks. It was a while to get to the train station, but we were right next to where they parked all the trains.
Oh.
So when we tried to record things, we'd be like, is there a train on the way? I lived in England as a child, and then we moved back to the US, and I always wanted to go back. And then my parents went back when I was in undergraduate, and then I was like, oh, cool, they're back over there, so I can go over there for graduate school. So I did, and then I went over to graduate school, and that's when we started creating podcasts. And
I recorded a lot of the Oxford sound effects while we were living there.
Yeah, Travis would just like bring that little recorder with him wherever we went, because we went on lots of little walks around the city, and just really squeaky gates and fields filled with cows, and just it's just we had such a lovely time.
And you're able to make such a lovely time sound so scary.
What is that? Hey! Turn the lights back on! Turn it on! Do you hear me?
So the next question on our other miniseries, Luca, there are rumors that it was inspired by actual events? ?
Eluga was inspired by a true story. Part of it was a dear friend of mine that I've known since I was very, very young worked, I don't know how much I'm allowed to say about their work, but they worked on a boat in the Indian Ocean, and they had this phenomenal experience with some birds that decided to land and sometimes crash onto their boat. And vomit a lot, and
all at once.
So I think some of them died. I just had this huge conversation with them,
and they were barefoot.
Yeah.
And they had to run across the deck to tell all these different people what was happening through the vomiting and the pooping and the...
And
sorry, the birds
they were telling me the story.
No, the person.
The birds.
I mean, I think yes. So, and they told me the story, and I was like, I'm writing this other story right now. This would fit so well into part of the narrative that I need. Do you mind if I use this? And they were totally on board. Yeah, so part of it was inspired by true events.
And then every time we have a guest, we always ask for a bit of history or a scary story that they may be aware of from the place they're from.
It's quite lucky that I do the Ghost Walks because I have been exposed to quite a few of the local ghosts and the local legends. One thing that Ripon is famous for is it's got 3 museums, those being the Workhouse, the Courthouse, and the Prison and Police Museum. So it gives you a nice little slice of life where you'd get taken into prison or locked up for the night, taken to court, and then if you ended up being a felon, then you would probably end up in the workhouse, which is where a lot of people died. So if you go into the workhouse, you can definitely feel that there is an atmosphere to it. As you go down, there's one main corridor in the main bit of the museum, which was the tramp cells, which are all about the size of a not the size of an American car parking space, but just a little bit smaller. They were locked in from the outside and then let out to do their work, and then they'd go back in with some food and
Can I ask one clarifying question?
Yes, sir.
So
Yeah.
in the beginning you used the word tramp to describe...
Homeless.
I was picturing small dogs.
No, not Lady and the Tramp. Anyway, so there is that. Then there is the main block, which is where the main inmates used to live. They were separated, of course, into their classes. So there were 7 classes. You started off with men who could work, men who were elderly, then teenage boys, then women who could work, because of course women come lower down than men, women who are elderly, women who are teenagers, and then children at the bottom, because children are, for the most part, useless. So they got an education, and then they got sent out to be or into the trades, like being a servant or whatnot. And there is a story about one particular matron of the workhouse who had her own particular way of punishing the children that did not conform. There was, on the top floor, there was a room, and at the end of the room, there was a cupboard, and that cupboard could be locked from the outside. So if she had need, she would take a child upstairs, up into that attic room, right the way to the end of that attic room. There was no one underneath it, and put the child in the cupboard, lock it, and leave the child there for a couple of hours. It is said that one day, the matron had just put a child up in that cupboard, and then as she came down the stairs, she was told that her sister had been taken ill in Leeds, which is, it's 45 minutes away now. It's a good couple of hours back then. And so she went to minister to her sister, and of course she hadn't told anyone that there was a small child up in the cupboard at the end of the attic room. And of course, it was just treated as, little Johnny is not around. He must have run away or something. And it was only when she was on the way back when she realized that this child had been left in that room for days. And when she got back there, got up, of course, it was too late for the child, malnourished as it already was. But it is said that it's not the child that can be heard wringing their hands and crying around what is now a car park. It is actually the matron herself who lost a child in childbirth, possibly as a result of what she did. Who knows? One more story, nice quick story, if you will. So there was a barber, a particular barber who he had very particular tastes. Now, underneath the cathedral used to be what was called the Bone House. It is now the Chapel of the Resurrection. It was the Bone House. It was where bodies were stored when in previous times, like 200 years before, when you had the plague, etc., there wasn't enough hallowed ground to be able to bury them in, so they got put underneath the cathedral and just got left to rot in there. And then by the time the Victorians came round, hey presto, we've got some sort of, it's a visitor attraction, a tourist attraction. You can pay a couple of pennies and go down and look at the mouldering skeletons that are down there. There was a lot of skeletons down there, an awful lot. And this particular barber had this idea that instead of having a metal bowl for creating the foam to shave, for shaving his clients, he wanted a bowl made of bone. And so he went down, paid the sexton a bribe, went down there, selected a particularly choice skull, chopped the top off and just took it up. And there you go. There's the slightly yellowish bone bowl, and you can imagine the looks on the faces of his clients when he was mixing the foam in this strange receptacle. But it was a couple of nights later, apparently, when the barber was at home, tucked up in bed, when an apparition appeared at the door and pointed and in a booming voice said, "How dare you defile my skull in this way? How could you take my skull, sir?" Whatever his name was. I am a knight of the realm. How could you take my skull and debase it so? And there, the barber is just there, sort of going, "Oh, sorry, I'm really, really sorry. It's through there." And the knight said, "If I ever see a skull in here again that isn't attached to someone, then I'm going to come back and I'm going to, do horrible things to you in the way that ghosts kind of threaten." And the next morning, when I don't think he had a lot of sleep that night, but the barber had been able to get out of bed and go through into his barber shop, he saw that the skull, the bone bowl, was no longer there. It had disappeared. And when he went back down into the bone house, paid the sexton a couple of pennies again, there in the bone house was the skull, fully reattached, and inside the two sets of grinning teeth were the shaving brush and a bar of soap.
That's a delightful story.
I know, yeah.
And those are both local to your town?
Apparently. City.
Very, very important distinction for a city with 11,000 people.
Yep.
You can't see the silent stare and point that David just did, but
It's very intense.
No, but those are really fantastic, and but a hint of what you could hear if you go on the ghost tour of Ripon.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. We haven't been able to do any of the ghost walks this year because 2020, but we're hoping to get back to it next year.
Well, that'll be really fantastic, and we really, again, appreciate your time with us. We've had quite a few fun stories with you, and many a question answered.
Absolutely. It is a pleasure and quite simply an honor to be involved with you. You say that you fanboy over me, but I fanboy over you guys because it really is such a consistently good stream of audio and writing and production, and it is cast me more. I want more scripts, more, please.
Absolutely, and thank you one more time.
Absolutely, thank you very much. Yes, and you.
And everyone, we just wanted to wish you happy holidays one more time from us here at Fool and Scholar Productions, all of us here, and we'll be back with the next episode of Season 4 in 2 weeks.
We'll be seeing you in the light.